What's up, guys? My name is Angus Crossley, and today I'll be showing you how to get that cinematic film look in your footage using color grading techniques in iMovie. Now, there are a lot of other programs that can do this, like Adobe Premiere or Final Cut Pro, but I decided to start off with iMovie because the controls are really simple and intuitive, which makes the whole process really easy to learn, especially if you're a beginner. So without talking anymore, let's just go ahead and open up the program and get started. And once you have that opened up, why don't you just go ahead and click Create New and click Movie to open up a new project. Then click Import to bring your footage into your workspace. For this tutorial, I'll use some of the clips I had for an American Eagle ad campaign I shot using my GoPro in 4K resolution with 30 frames per second and set at ISO 400. You can also change the color settings on your camera, so I typically bring the contrast down while filming, that way I can manually color grade after. Once your clips have loaded in, go ahead and grab the one you want to work with and drag it into your timeline. If you notice in the top right corner, you have a couple of icons. These are your tools for editing your footage, and the screen below will show you a preview of that clip. The first tool we'll look at is useful for matching the colors of clips after they have had color correction done to them. When you click on the icon, the preview will show you two clips side by side. The clip on the right side will display where the playhead marker is on the timeline, and the clip on the left will be the point at which you want to color match. This is a very efficient tool if you have multiple clips to color grade at once. Next to the color match tool, there's an icon that looks like a paint palette. This is your color correction tool, so start by clicking on that icon. You'll notice it brings up three sliders. Now, since iMovie is very simple and doesn't have independent settings for changing things like midtones or exposure, your controls are sort of grouped into these three sliders, with the first one controlling shadows, exposure, contrast, and brightness. The far right button on the slider controls highlights, and by moving it you can lighten or darken the bright areas of your clips. On the opposite side is a dark button which controls shadows, allowing you to adjust how deep or light the dark areas of your clip are. Finally, the button in the middle controls the overall brightness of your clip, with the buttons directly on either side of it controlling the contrast, which can help the colors and shadows stand out by increasing and decreasing the difference between the light and dark areas. Moving on, we have a second slider which controls the saturation. Moving this left or right will make your clip appear more or less colorful. The last slider adjusts the temperature of your clip. Moving it to the left or blue area will give your clip a colder look with a silverish or a blue tint, depending on how drastic you want the effect. Moving the slider to the right into the yellow area will give the clip a warmer look with a yellowish tint. There is no set way to color grade clips, so you have to play around with these slides according to how you want your footage to look and the feeling that's supposed to be conveyed. For the clip I have here in my timeline, I think that there's a little bit too much exposure, and I would like to see some more depth and shadows brought out, as well as a little more color contrast in the waves and sand. So I'll start off by increasing my shadows by moving that button to the left, and also by reducing my highlights by just a little bit. Next, I'll add a little bit more contrast to the bright portions of my clip. This is giving the clip a little bit more depth and has boosted the colors just enough to be polished off by the other two sliders. So to give the waves, sand, and sky a little more pop, I'm just going to adjust the saturation by first sliding the button all the way up, which for me is just a little bit too much, so I'm just going to work my way down until I find a good point to settle. And about here looks good. Now after that's finished, I only have one slider left to work with, and since this clip is of the beach, I want people to really feel that warmth and comfort when viewing this, so I'm going to move the button to the right to give it that feel, and also to help boost those colors and depth just a little bit more. Okay, so now I've finished color grading this clip, and it looks pretty good throughout, but it can be improved just a little bit more by doing this simple trick called letterboxing. Letterboxes are these things that you can overlay in your footage to quickly give it the cinematic look. But it's important to remember, however, that letterboxing is different than filming at a wider aspect ratio, so your footage doesn't get wider or change proportions, it's just hidden by the letterbox, meaning that you should try to make sure your subject is in the center of your clip or it will get cut off or hidden by these letterboxes. To get this effect in iMovie, all you have to do is go to Google Drive, open up New Drawing, and set the proportions of your clip by clicking File and coming down to Scale. For this purpose, I'm just going to do 1920 by 1080 pixels and then click OK. Then all you have to do is draw in 2 rectangles, put them in place, and fill them in with the color black. And then save this file as a .png so it can be overlaid on your clip. And just like that, your footage has a more cinematic look. Okay, so without the letterboxes, let's look at the difference the color grading has made on our clip by looking at it before and then after. As you can see, the footage looks a lot more professional and has a lot more depth to it than before, and it definitely has that cinematic look that you might be looking for. Before I end this video though, I want to show you guys one more example of a different style clip and also give you one more tip on achieving that cinematic look to your footage. So for this time, I took a clip of a stone building where I wanted more of a cold and steely look. So just like before, I adjusted my highlights, shadows, contrast, exposure, and saturation. But this time, I moved the temperature slider to the left to achieve that cold feeling. I think it really makes a stone building stand out more. Aside from throwing on some letterboxes, I also slowed down the clip to make it look like it was shot at a lower frame rate. It's a very subtle effect, but it works well if you use it right, especially in clips with a lot of motion like this one. And that's how you create that cinematic look in iMovie. If you guys like this video, please make sure to like and subscribe, and if you have any other topics you'd like me to cover, let me know in the comments down below. In the future, I'll also be showing you how to do this in Adobe Premiere and Final Cut Pro, so stay tuned for that. Thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time.